Mason, great to be with you. Thank you for your time.
So good to be here, man. Yeah, my pleasure. Finally got around to doing it.
Finally got around. The juggling family, business, travel, life. How's it all going?
Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, it's a fun juggle. Real amalgamating year for me. It's been big adventures on the business SuperFeast side of things. We just finished a retreat, which was magical and transformational, but had us going, hang on, do we want to be on top of family and all these other things, be doing a retreat business right now? And kind of go, yes, we do. But at the same time, we're like, just kind of put that off for a while and just really, go, head down, bum up in what our core responsibilities and passions are right now. So that's my zone at the start of the year.
Cool. I've been watching your videos and your social media. I love the passion you're bringing into SuperFeast. It's beautiful watching you explore the land you're getting your herbs from and connecting to the people that are growing it and the deep roots of DAO. And I think for starters, it'd be nice because we kind of take it for granted that people in our kind of circles know what tonic herbalism is and what DAO is, but a lot of my listeners probably don't. So let's kind of just start at kind of basics. And could you just speak about what is tonic herbalism?
Yeah, and absolutely, we are in a bubble, but as SuperFeast has grown, we've been going since 2011, so it's been a while now, and I definitely appreciate that there are waves and waves of people entering into this space that, they may have heard of adaptogenic herbs, and there's a crossover there between tonic herbalism and adaptogens. It's kind of a very colorful conversation, but we could generally say that's what the West will associate as a tonic herb. When you lean West, you're going to get an adaptogen. When you start leaning East a little bit more, especially into the ancient Chinese philosophy, Taoist herbal philosophy, you're going to start seeing that being described more as tonic herbalism, which is a philosophy rather than a classification, which is classic East versus West, right? Something that's like very broad and multidimensional, which is a class of herbs, tonic herbs, and revolving around that is a lifestyle that is thwarted with longevity intentions, with bringing lightness to the body and basically doing things now so that our organs and immune system and nervous system and endocrine system stays really vibrant and healthy. So when we get to the 80s, 90s, 100s, have really given ourselves the best chance to not enter into a degenerative state and enjoy our lives and continue to contribute in the most, the greatest way possible. Versus in the West, it's it's a useful compartmentalization and classification where this is an adaptogen. And so an adaptogenic herb many people may have heard of. It's a herb that is multi-directional in the body. So it goes in many directions. It's not just necessarily going to take cholesterol up or down. It'll help the body regulate it, or cortisol up and down, help the body regulate it, and really engage the body's response to internal and external stress and the body's ability to harmonize. It is going to have an accumulative effect on the body. So that means the longer you take this herb, the more it's going to accumulate in its benefits. And it's not going to have a harmful effect on the body. And so in the appropriate dose, that is just meaning over long periods of time, it's not going to bring any more harm or stress. And that's the classification of an adaptogen. So that's a general classification, description of what the herbs are that I work with. But then when you go into the ancient Taoist tonic herbal system, you start to see it goes a little bit deeper than that, like outside of this kind of like I just love last year, adaptogens were like hot on Instagram and everywhere. It was kind of like that. If you put hashtag adaptogens on your post, you got like at least an extra 50 likes. And it was like adaptogens for everything, which is what the West does with a fad. It's like, oh my gosh, what do you got? Stressed? Adaptogens. Just to make sure you're taking adaptogens. What do you got? A sore knee? Adaptogens. You got daddy issues? Adaptogens. And it was like in that zone, right? I'm like, and I'm being a little bit facetious, but not really. It kind of gets that. It's like a fad diet, that people are on, and they just drink the Kool-Aid with it. But that's why I like being a company that, yes, I offer adaptogens because people understand that, but I like being a company that really does tonic herbalism, Taoist tonic herbalism. We see this emerging in ancient China in terms of a written history. Around 200 BC, Shen Nong, who's a herbalist, said to be so good at feeling the effects and the way that herbs affected the body and the meridians that he had a transparent stomach, and he'd watch the way that the herbs would digest. And of course, he created the first materia medica that was and materia medicas aren't just one person. It's the reason I say of course, because he did it in collaboration with with even more ancient shamans and herbalists and so on and so, medicine women and medicine men, basically to bring the first materia medica. In that sense, we have people moving away from civilization, not on the land, not just understanding herbalism as and tapped in intuitively, but having, all right, I have a book here that classifies herbs into different sections and tells me what herb is good for when. And there, in that materia medica, there were 3 classifications: lower, middle, and upper herbs. Now, that's not a hierarchy of good or bad, but the upper herbs were those that were identified to be gentle, safe, to be, when they were taken, they were adaptogenic enough, they were able to contribute to the organs and function and the system so that the body could bring itself back into harmony over long term. When of course, we got to cycle the herbs and use our intuition of when to do that. It's not just like, just take this herb for the rest of your life and you'll be fine. You could do that with tonic herbs, but at the same time, you're not going to reach optimal doing that. But taking an appropriate amount of this herb over long term with it in your diet, that's what Shen Nong said were the tonics, the upper herbs, the superior herbs.
Can you give a few examples of that?
So we've got
there's so many.
Reishi mushroom. We have Poria, another mushroom. We have Chaga. We have lion's mane. So these are all medicinal mushrooms I'm talking about, and we'll make that distinction. But then it's more than medicinal mushrooms, of course. Schizandra berry, Eucomia bark, roots, Hishu wu, and Romania. And in order to make them tonic, we need to prepare them in a certain way. So there is a big science and law and history behind this. We've got more roots like morinda. We've got orchids like dendrobium. We have minerals, microground pearl from oysters. We have animal herbs like at SuperFeast, our 2 kind of non-vegan herbs with a pearl that we use in the beauty blend, and our
There's even debate on if it is vegan or not. I was speaking with Heath a couple of weeks ago, and he's holding pretty strong that the bivalves, including oysters, are technically vegan. And again, there's strong debate, but he's holding strong on that because, for one, they don't have a central nervous system. And if we're gonna regard them not vegan or vegan, it would be very similar to debating that about plants as well.
Dude, I'm all over that conversation with you, and I'm in Heath's corner with that. Part of me actually doesn't care whether you classify it as vegan or not. I'm kind of more of the opinion that a vegan diet doesn't actually exist outside of a moral philosophy. So that I get it. I've basically been there. Besides beet products, I understand the fact that I'm choosing to eat that and not eat that. So there's a reality of it. But in terms of whether veganism exists or not, it kind of I just don't think it does, and it's not a relevant one for me to get involved with. But in terms of oysters, they've been a gateway to people stepping out of hardcore fanatical veganism for that reason, which is nice. And I've got a lot of vegans who contact me, go, I want that beauty blend. And I'm like, including big influencers. And I'm like, it's not vegan technically. So, and they're like, they look at it. They're like, actually, no, don't worry about it. They look at what Pearl does in terms of toning the Shen, the spirit, and calming the mind, purifying the skin from the inside out, and helping to bring coolness to the liver. And if you've got a hot liver constitution, if you're really, if you're jittery, headachy, if you've got ascending chi from the liver, which is getting a little bit technical, of course, but I like seeing this folky traditional Chinese medicine Taoist terminology entering into the house more and more, and de-institutionalizing it from the TCM practitioners as the naturopaths. There's beautiful TCM practitioners and naturopaths being like, guys, this stuff is so simple. We can make it complicated. And of course, there's times when, this is what I like doing. There are times when you have to acknowledge the limits of your knowledge because your full-time job isn't TCM or Taoism or naturopathy or whatever it is. But that doesn't mean you don't have the right to go and start learning some of this terminology that then gets you further in touch with your meridians and with your organs so that in the times that matter, like when when your kid's got a little rash or your kid's got a tick and you need, like an act like a sorry, like a not an actual tick that carries Lyme, like a tick, like, all right, what's going on here? Like, what's going on here with their organ system? What's going on here with their shen? So that you can start doing a lifestyle design that's actually going to then give rise to a culture that's inherently healing and sovereign within yourself. And then at the same time, have your people, have your practitioners here and there that can and ones that are actually going to encourage you to pick up the reins of your own health and take it on. So that's why I like tonic herbalism. Basically, and what the final one we were talking about veganism there, the final example I had was a deer antler velvet, where at 60 days of the growth cycle, each year a deer will grow, grow antlers, and then they will fall off. And so it's very ancient in the north of China to at 60 days of the cycle to remove that gelatinous, hormone-rich, growth factor-rich herb, and it's probably the most regenerative herb we've got. And if anyone's curious about that, maybe I can send it to you for the show notes. I've got me going live. Yeah, we've got a live from that I did.
I watched that actually, but yeah, I'll put that in the notes. I watched that the other night. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, because it's such a beautiful herb, deer antler, and it's so regenerative. Women who are going through the most hardcore menopausal symptoms, men who are deteriorating after their version of menopause, andropause, it's 50s and 60s, you see men start deteriorating very quickly sometimes.
Well, it's becoming an epidemic, apparently one of the highest suicide rates, the age gap and the gender specificities, men in that 50 to 60 age group. Testosterone plummeting, maybe identity crisis, maybe they're losing their job. But that combination, I think, with the testosterone lowering, and I'm seeing it personally, a lot of men around me that haven't really taken care of themselves and they've put on a lot of weight and they've found out that their testosterone has just plummeted. There's a direct correlation with these other diseases such as depression and whatnot. So to get more in touch with that and to find remedies rather than just pumping full of pharmaceutical testosterone.
Yeah, that's it, man. People don't realize, because at the same time, these are huge conversations. So you nailed on the head that transitioning and identity crisis, that's what comes up a lot of these times. And within the body, you need to have done a lot of work on creating a solidity within who you are, and who you are without being identified externally, of course, with with an identity. But at the same time, it takes very strong hormone function to be able to undergo those psychological changes. And it takes a lot of kidney essence, and we call Jing. And so at this point, this is where the West goes, okay, great, I'm going through this. I'm going to get on deer antler and, maybe, this will be the one that helps me. And it's such it works. But it's a very, this should be a support strategy that you should be getting on preventatively. These herbs are wonderful clinically. And if a woman's going through really gnarly menopausal symptoms, I'll be like, yes, we can somewhat use this herb clinically to get you back on track and then get you onto your maintenance program. Same with men that have smashed their adrenals over their lives and don't have testosterone because their livers are sluggish at the same time. I'm going to be going from a tonic herbal perspective. Yeah, we're going to get you on good doses of deer antler and schizandra berry for your liver, and that deer antler to really hopefully restore that endocrine function. But you really, you can't rely on this thing. All of tonic herbalism, the philosophy surrounding it is this non-ability to rely on it to be the savior. And the whole point of it is to get on these things and get on these herbs. Yes, they have constituents that are incredible for restoring endocrine function. With the medicinal mushrooms, constituents that are amazing at activating the immune system. And say schizandra berry, you can see there are functions within the compounds that are going and helping phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification of the liver. But that's 20% of the intent of tonic herbalism. 80% is based on your intent long-term for your health. And through usage of these herbs, you start to get perception of your own endocrine function. Through taking medicinal mushrooms for a time, you start to get perception of your own immune function. Now, this might seem a bit wishy-washy, but believe me, it's not. If everyone listening, that is huge Yeah, I mean, and when you start to feel your immunity and you like, and it's, and we got to be practical with that. It's not like you're going, oh, yeah, that's some phagocytosis going on right there. And yeah, my TH1 and TH2 are adjusting and now we're in harmony. It's like, it's a sense. It's just a sense of the effect that these herbs are having with your body on your body. And then you start to feel your organ systems and your general system, your immune system, your hormonal function. You start to get this in non-English perception and feeling of what they are. And then once you start to feel it, you start to feel the edges a little bit more of your health. And it starts to become a little bit easier for you just to blindly tiptoe into a chronic illness anymore because you've felt your immunity. And especially in the sense of your adrenals and your kidneys, basically what's happening in the West a lot of the time, it's a bit of a generalization, but it's quite correct, is that people are leaking their pure Jing essence from their kidneys. And that correlates to adrenal function. You're cutting off the adrenals from being able to associate with the hypothalamus and the pituitary. So your HPA axis, which is basically helping you adjust heavily to stresses within your life. And then that's associating over into your nervous system function, your ability to remain in a rest and digest place rather than, which is like why we love getting into a practice and practicing being in that space while we're moving throughout life and then taking that into our lives. So I'm sure your listeners are all over the perception of that side of things, but everyone's smashing the coffees and then going and sacrificing their energy because they're designing their lifestyles poorly and they don't have this malleable, multi-dimensional hierarchy of values. One value just overtakes all the others versus there just being this ecosystem of value sets, right? That really should be able to chop and change at different spaces within your life. And so basically what everyone does is they smash it and they burn it at both ends and they leak their kidney essence. And basically that's why you see people get to 50, 60, 70, 80, and all of a sudden they enter into that rapid decline, that rapid aging, because that Jing is associated with your ratio of sex hormones and the production of them and the conversion of them. It's associated with your ability for your spleen to actually turn on and digest properly. It's associated with your mitochondria being able to actually have the pilot light on so they can operate properly. It's associated with your genetic expression, with regenerating tissue, rebuilding bone, storing and modulating bone marrow, and your ability to then create potent immunity and stem cells ongoingly throughout your life through that function. On and on and on we go, and people burn it at both ends. And then when you get to the point where you have an identity crisis, when you get to 50 or 60 or any point, or you have to move house, or you lose your job, or you get, someone dies, or you get sick, you don't realize energetically you've been walking on eggshells and you haven't designed correctly.
And I think this decline and this kind of identity crisis is even happening earlier these days with the social media thing. And I'm just seeing it a lot. I'm seeing it in kids. Like I do like private yoga sessions with some families, and some of these families I've known the kids since they were very young. And that decline very commonly is happening fucking early, really early, from like school. As soon as school begins, I'm seeing a commonality of this decline, this rigidity, this a lot of what would be wrapped up into the ADD conversation, which I can relate to as well. Like when I was at school, I had no focus at all. My nutrition was crap. I was loaded on just too much sugar. And I've inclined since then, so to speak. Like I felt like I was declining as a kid, and then life is just getting better now. And there's a common perception, even like as soon as you become like a mom or a dad, you decline, like even old friends I catch up with, they're still good friends, but like from high school and whatnot, they'll often just assume, they'll be surprised. They're like, holy shit, you're a dad of two, like, and you're not fat? Like they'll just kind of be quite shocked. So there's this common perception, like as soon as you become a mum or a dad, like you decline. And there's a common perception, even like as soon as you get like a quote unquote real job, or just the again, typical aspects of society, you decline. Like that's still a very common residue in our culture. So it seems like you're really playing a pivotal part in helping people find autonomy and find a much more vital way of living in which it doesn't have to be a decline, which I see happening way earlier than 50 now, like way earlier.
It does, man. It happens it happens sporadically throughout life, and just interestingly, it is happening younger and younger. Now, the interesting thing there, what we're doing with Tonic Herbalism, why I love it, is because you get people onto these herbs that can start to gently restore a little bit of kidney essence. Now, sometimes with these herbs, sometimes people are going to have to take like a long few months or maybe years to go through a rebuild process. They're not magic pills. These are very ancient primordial herbs that have been used for a long time. Sometimes you find your herb and someone will go like, my gosh, I can feel, so like they're taking Hishul Wu or Eucomia bark or the blend Jing for their kidney essence. They can feel, they even start with like a half a teaspoon, or if they're feeling comfortable with it, they go for a teaspoon. They can feel that essence going in over the first few days. Now, generally what they're going to be feeling is a deficiency being filled. So although it's great to feel that big wash, or if you're taking medicinal mushrooms for the first time, you get an electric energy moving through your body as your immune system's activated, right? Or as your chi starts moving, because it's such potent chi tonics. Now that's wonderful, but that's not generally what we're looking for with herbalism. You don't want your energetic or physical biology to necessarily be impacted that much by a tonic herb long term, right? And so it's great because you've identified something. But say the Jing Herbs come in, you start going, far out, I'm feeling energized. Gosh, this is amazing. Some people go, is it a stimulant? And it's so not a stimulant. It's like as far as you can get from a stimulant in terms of regenerating adrenal function. And then they build. And then all of a sudden they go, wow, there's that baseline of energy. There's my normal. And then ideally in their lifestyle design, that starts to become a bit of a marker for where they're going to, that's like, I'm only going to accept being in this place from now on. And they can feel their edges a little bit more. They can feel when they're going to go into a little bit of adrenal exhaustion a little bit faster, which is going to stop you going into that trap where you're leaking Jing and ending up as a 70-year-old that has wiped out their knees and their hips and their spine strength, because that emerges and is regulated by the kidneys, right? And especially from a Taoist perspective. So basically at that point, when you start bringing back the kidney essence, what we hear time and time again is, you know what? It's just giving me that bit more energy and ability, or maybe removing a little bit of the fog of the mind, because the kidney function, again in Taoism, is governing the marrow of the brain, because the kidneys govern the marrow. A little bit more energy to just like, keep on going, just do a little bit more for my, for my food preparation for myself or my family. I can just, I've just got like the amount of times I've heard someone go, I've just got like half an hour more in me. And I've just, and I've started like working on my business a little bit on the side. And some, students that are just like, what, I'm coming out at the end of the day and my mood's kind of okay, because physiologically, you're not entering into that hyper stress space. Your endocrine system is able to actually keep track of the intense workload that you've got. And ideally, you start pulling back from a couple of things that you realize that's not actually a core value of mine. That's not actually something I'm doing for me right here, right now. And it's not sustainable for me, but to be putting energy into this extracurricular activity, or into this course, or this thing that isn't really nourishing me right now. And when you start getting into the longevity conversation, be like, you know what? I don't know how long we're going to be around for, but I basically want to ensure that my lifestyle revolves around ensuring my mental function, my neurological function, my endocrine function is going to keep me damn healthy for as long as I can. You get more and more of a lowering of this lack. I've got to do everything now because I know I'm going to lack time in the future. And you start to feel this like abundance pour forth as you make wiser decisions about what you do invite into your life and what you do say yes and no to right now. Now, that's a skill that we need to learn, probably takes a decade. And then you talk to people that have learned it over a decade and they're still refining it. So no pressure on anyone, but get started right now, because far out, it is easy in this Western culture to get swept up too much in the glorification of the present moment, and just do just enough so you can actually be present right here, right now, and just leave some stuff to do for your future self, and just make sure that your future self is rocking with health. So that's what I love about this and preparing people for the future. So I love, especially, I'm going to give some practicals for people. Jing Herbs, if you are in that exhausted state, these are the Taoist tonic herbs that we really like starting with. Whether it's and our team can talk to you. You can DM us on Instagram. You can call SuperFeast. You can email SuperFeast. Whatever. We're here to chat. But
it's great, man. Yeah, I mean, it does feel really necessary as we enter this very unknown next chapter of the technological advancement, so to speak. Like, there's just so many free radicals flying around, and that's just going more and more amplified. The 5G thing and the Bluetooth, and it just we're swimming in free radicals. Yeah. We're swimming in toxicity, really, and just to have the tools to take our vitality to another level and our clarity and our resilience. It really feels like you're speaking to that preparation for the future. And again, it is very seductive and easy to just fall into the trap of what is normal in our culture of just yo-yoing from this edgy, overly caffeinated, overly stressed, sympathetic response to life, to then the collapse, the tank, the depressed, the flat. And it's so easy to fall into that samsara, that cycle of intense suffering. And that has been normalized, very, very much so. And then the quick hit of going to the doctor, the quick hit of something that'll be a Band-Aid solution to that when we do finally hit rock bottom and hit depression or chronic anxiety or something like that. It's just not an answer. It's not an effective answer. And the amount of people I've seen going from antidepressant to antidepressant to antidepressant to antidepressant to this, to that, the other, and the doctor not having a game plan, not having an intelligent...
No, they've got no understanding of how to move. Generally, like, there's good doctors out there. I do know that for sure. There are amazing doctors out there, but there are also some fucking awful doctors out there, and a lot of them are getting people. I watched it happen to my mother, and I'm kind of like, it drives me, and it's been my lesson to not be bitter about it or not to have a chip on my shoulder about it, but just, there's watch them put her on an antidepressant, no plan. 15 years later, trying to get off herself, not being able, and that's her lesson as well, to not just run into an institution's clause and let them get it in when they got no idea how to transition people from one stage of healing to another. And that's gone on and had massive repercussions. Though that's been a big lesson for me, not to really hold on to that, because then that just really does not benefit anyone.
Further exacerbates the divide, doesn't it? From Eastern wisdom.
And that's exactly the problem. We're not integrated, and there's no sensible, mature adult conversation in the validity of different aspects of medicine. Actually looking at the hardcore data and respecting the fact that, I can look at the data coming from a different branch of medicine and do my best to empathize and understand it. Doesn't mean I need to agree with it, but really understand the ins and outs of their point and their argument, which is happening more and more. But the other thing you talked about is, that hardcore tenseness, the tension that everyone's carrying around, coffees, all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, getting smashed with all the, just with everything that's going on in our environment. What you see happening in the health scene a lot of the time is people become aware of the 5G and the towers and the blue lights at night coming off our screens and how technologically tapped in we are. And maybe they get a little bit into the conspiracy of what's going on a governmental level. And maybe they get a little bit into the Anunnaki, and they're like, and they're like, oh my gosh, and Wi-Fi is smashing us. And it's a fun world. Don't get me wrong, it's super fun, that conspiracy world, and there is absolute reality to what blue light's doing to us. There is absolute reality to what 5G is doing to us, absolute reality, what Wi-Fi is doing. Just so you get aware to the best of your ability of these things, and you look at some of the data and you look at what some of the experts are saying, both sides of the coin. Get yourself into a position where you're making sensible choices around these things, like turning Wi-Fi off at night and ideally minimizing the amount of screen time you're having at night. So these are practical things that are oozing their way into the culture. But what people are not doing when they enter into that space is they're not realizing that their own tension and paranoia about it is that literally the thing that's going to kill them. And one thing that a lot of the Taoists will say, my partner Tani's teacher, who's many people's teacher, Mantak Chia, who teaches, in north of Thailand there. Tani learned Chinasang organ abdominal massage with him. And he was saying, if you are being really affected by this Wi-Fi and the mobile towers, basically your chi is off. You're deficient in chi. Your cellular metabolism is off, and you're not as strong as you need to be. Basically, if you're in a place of optimal health, then these things shouldn't affect you. Now, then I want to take that into make that a reality, just basically as a distinction that there are things that we can do to take it back into our own hands. And one of those things is working on our chi via our immune system, via releasing tension for our body, and also focusing our supplementation and whatever gadgets we're using and whatever herbs we're using, focus it on your biology, whether it's physical or electrical biology, to give you space to perceive what's going on in your body rather than just this solo mental paranoia of maybe I'm ambiguously blocking this thing that's going to harm me. Maybe keep that at 20%, but 80% needs to be based on your physiology. So in terms of tonic herbalism, when we're taking medicinal mushrooms, it's wonderful that they can help the body. Say if someone's in a state of, like coming off chemo, they can help remove and regenerate the body from during and after chemo. Or even if you're generally worried about the effects of radiation in the system, they've been shown to be very protective. Okay, we've got 20% of the awareness on that. Also, the fact that they're going to help us offset the incredible pathogenic load, parasites, bacterium, fungus, virus that because everyone's so sick and everyone's so electrically sick because we do have so much negative EMF and Wi-Fi smashing the cells, and people aren't aware how to build back their cellular resilience to offset these things. We've become very susceptible to be composted early and broken down by viral load, by fungal load. A lot of people walking around with candida and all this kind of stuff excessively because they got no immune system as well. And so one of those things that you can get really paranoid about in the beginning is just like they're everywhere. There's things trying to break me down everywhere. And again, put that into that 20% awareness, but 80% is focused on your long-term relationship with your immunity. What is my immunity? What does it feel like? What is it going to enable me to do in the future? And that puts you in such a beautiful heart space and mental space in terms of building a lifestyle for yourself that maintains the resilience and means your mind doesn't have to try and juggle this infinite plethora of things that are seemingly trying to attack you and kill you. And then in that 20%, that's where your mind can be satiated by having your naturopath, getting your panels done, getting your tests done, because I definitely don't think ignorance is bliss, but I definitely think that you are going to see an incredible amount of longevity and health in like now and in the future if you prioritize releasing this is especially if you're not in a degenerative space. If you don't have a chronic illness, it's easier. So I will put that caveat out there because I appreciate many people are in hardcore places. But if you're not, you need to work on reducing the tension physically within your body and your mind, and learn the way that your mind and your body connect, and learn that tension that you have, your excessive emotional reactions are tightening up your heart and your meridians and your actual physical organ systems to the extent where you are the one that is inhibiting your hormonal function or your liver detox phase function, so on and so forth, or you're at least contributing to it. And if you can start really getting perceptive of the way your emotions work. You're going to start getting perceptive of the way your chi moves through your body, because they're highly associated, especially when chi moves and gets transformed through the organs, or evolves into its next expression through the organs. When that's blocked, block, that's when you start getting that build up of that expression of a negative emotion that then gets spewed over other people or jammed internally. It's something you're going to be dealing with for the rest of your life. So you might as well look at it, right? You might as well, because otherwise it's just going to like pile up and spew out anyway, or become a degenerative disease, because it does start there, because you are actually talking about a correlation with physiological function and an ability for you to chemically metabolize and chemically move functions through and transform chemicals through the body, like modulate hormones. We're talking about that when it comes to emotions. It's like the first place we want to start. And you are just going to have such a fun life that way. There's too many people that are paranoid about all this stuff. And I've definitely been there. I definitely get it. And I think we've both seen people in the space that you can see when paranoia drives them, where it ends them up in terms of their disposition and what they do and the actions that they take in life. We've both seen that. And it's not that that's a judgment, but it's just you watch people and you go, is that my person? Is that the way I want to end up? Is that the way I want to be for my community? Is that, when I'm 60?
That's right.
Is this like,
And a big part of the Tao is the middle path, which feels in correlation with that as well. I mean, the more paranoid we get, the more divide we also create. So it feels like this middle way is the way in which we can hear anyone's perspective and hear where they're coming from and find a deeper wisdom and equanimity. But yeah, it's very enticing to fall into that kind of rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. And yeah, you've been there, I've been there. You can form your own bubbles of that, and you can feed each other's belief. And yeah, like you said, it is fun, but it doesn't really help anything. It just creates more divide. But it does seem very real when you're in it, when I'm in it, it does seem very real. But fuck, it's so draining. It is very, very draining. So yeah, finding that heart space, that wisdom, that clarity, and to penetrate the paranoia, which does take skill to be able to witness the paranoia, absolutely, the divide, and to see it objectively, to see it beyond our own kind of hypocrisy. It's a deep yoga practice for sure.
I mean, the whole world is so magical and so fucked at the same time. I mean, the only way to survive is to bring in a little bit of that jester energy. You like when you're looking down the barrel of that conspiracy stuff and you see how deep it goes. And I still love having those conversations. I just try and have more practical, grounded conversations that if someone doesn't agree or if someone has an opposing point that is even valid, it doesn't put you in that position where you're like, you're just brainwashed. You don't understand. You just don't get it. It's such a bypass, and it's such a bad. It's such a poor statement internally that was for me leading down the path of kind of being an asshole. And that was a very black and white example I gave, but really a little bit of that jester energy. If you're stuck in that space and you're looking down the conspiracy of the 5G, or gosh, it can get gnarly. You can go off world with this thing. I kind of part of me is just like, all right, cool. So what? Let's go have a beer. Like, it's honestly, to some extent, I think you need to be like, you look at those things dead in the eye and you do what you can in the moment to ensure that you're going to remain a good person and contribute to that, contribute to spreading awareness in a way that it happens via osmosis and people actually don't enter into your belief system based out of fear, but based out of empowerment. Go, make it your life's mission, your life's work. But at the same time, just keep that little bit of a giggle. Look at your own death, first of all. Like, all right, cool. There's going to be a lot of suffering and we're all going to die. And it's all part of this big cosmic giggle anyway. So just like, let's go have a beer. Like, there has to be a part of that as a remedy. Now, I kind of just like another practicality of kind of just in case we don't get there. I mean, like we've talked about the fact that tonic herbs, there's lots of different types of herbs. We mentioned a bunch of them. We talked about Jing Herbs quite a lot today to get people just their baseline of energy, right?
Yeah. And just to kind of slow it down a little bit, like I can see a big portion of the listeners vibing with this conversation, being able to keep up with the pace of where we're at, and already quite a bit of education. They're quite informed on this conversation. But I can also see another percentile of the listeners like not having a clue what we're talking about, and a lot of it going over their head. So let's just slow it down for a moment and like say someone that has never dove into this world of super herbs and herbalism and whatnot, but they're vibing with it. They're like, shit, yeah, like Mason's pumped. Like you can just feel it from you, your Jing, your inspiration. And I mean, that's the biggest selling point for your product, I think, just how you live and how you are. It's super inspiring. So to that person who's never heard of this type of conversation, but they're like, yeah, I need some of this. Where is a good place for them to start if they've never really explored herbs and they've just kind of taken your typical supplementation and relied on diet? Where's a good starting point for them?
Yeah, great point. Just practicalities. I've been running like SuperFeast. I've been running since 2011. So I personally just dove down this rabbit hole of longevity and tonic herbalism and taught myself. And, I've also mentored with a bunch of people along the way. And what you said about the biggest thing around SuperFeast, being my face and my excitement being out there, absolutely. Because, I've always, I've always driven with my passion around these herbs. And I've also just made my whole life revolve around the philosophy. And so I can speak truthfully, and I don't have a stagnant selling point around the herbs. And I will always call out anything that's becoming a little bit fad-like. I will always try and ensure that these herbs don't become a fad, but people's intentions can meet the usage of these herbs. And I think that's why SuperFeast continues to grow, because it's easy to trust a company when you can call up and talk to us extensively.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of transparency there as well, just and integrity. That's very apparent. The integrity of really taking it earnestly and not cutting any corners, and that's what seems to be happening.
Yeah, it's tough. Like it's been wonderfully tough. It's been my dojo and my practice for sure. And to like extent, like going, well, I'm using Chinese Taoist herbs. I'm going to source them from China because that's where they come from. And that's where I'm going to get the most potent herb. So for people, this is for the people listening who haven't heard of these things. This is what we're talking about. And I think it was nice for a lot of people to see, when I was in China last year, going live from a lot of the farms, and people have been able to ask questions live, doing that from Changbai Mountain, where we wild harvest the shaga, to Changbai as well, where we get the Shizandra berry, and everyone's seeing the orchard. And because people go, why aren't you organic? And I'm like, because it's not good enough. Like, it's really not good enough. I'm going from independent farmers who have little village operations, right? And the operations are diverse in terms of the way they work. And so for these villages to be getting organic certification is just does not make sense. And to have a parent company that kind of goes on, is kind of paid by the farmers to dish out their organic certification, therefore they're going to be under the thumb. Doesn't work for me that way. I think there's like organic. I love organic. It doesn't work for me. There's like one organic certification company that's like, yeah, we'll give it to you. And then another one that's like, no, because you do wild stuff, we couldn't give it to you. That seems like such a crock of shit and such a marketing thing. I might do it eventually, but I'll just go beyond organic and just show people where it comes from and go live and show that, look, there are mushrooms and weeds growing all around the Shizandra and all around the Hishu Wu. There's like first of all, we don't use pesticides because we test for the pesticides and heavy metals. And we test in China twice. We test in Australia from 2 labs here and get one, with those results. So we're happy to share with people.
Cool.
So
Because I do think a lot of people would have a knee-jerk reaction to China because nearly everything is made in China now, and the imagination sparks up on heavy pollution
And they almost should. But again, it's a good thing to remember your prejudices, like, to be like, oh my gosh, China. And I'm like, it's a xenophobia that you start to see, and people go, gosh, you know what? I just could never trust anyone, and they're all so shifty and around. Be like, all right, but when you look at Australia, you look at the fact that Australia is digging up uranium. It is completely decimating their indigenous community. They're doing the shit that we're doing to the Great Barrier Reef. They're about to start blasting and looking for oil down along the Bight. We've absolutely destroyed via cotton farming the Murray-Darling, and it's been very, very corrupt. Like, if you were looking at Australia just through black and white eyes, you could just be like, fuck all Australians. Those are terrible people. Look what they're doing to the natural resources. And that would be a very black and white and not very colorful conversation, because there are wonderful people in Australia, as we know, as there are people within China who are keeping this Taoist tradition very sacred, who love their herbs. And you mentioned Dao in the very beginning. That's our sourcing philosophy. You go via the ancient texts of where these herbalists said, if you want the best reishi, you go to Darby Mountains, right? If you want the best shaga, you go up to Changbai Mountain. Best Poria, right? Yunnan province, because there's particular, the atmosphere and the temperate is very just driven towards creating a superior product. But there are also atmospheric and cosmological aspects, that are within alignment there. There's cosmic elements that have been sucked up and drawn into the herb that then are passed on to the person that is consuming it. And so that's at the heart of the Dao philosophy, right? So yeah, the Chinese conversation, that's why I went live, and the amount of people writing to me while I was over there and I was sharing just these vistas and this land, the amount of people going, I can't believe this is China. I cannot honestly believe this is China. And you know what? I didn't realize I got a call. I got a call to go there. And there's all of a sudden that that heron medicine starts coming up. And, a lot of people have already felt that call and already done a lot of martial arts there and, studied TCM and all these kinds of things. But there's something, that's there to go get a thing. Going there for the land itself, just the same way people are called to Peru. That's happening a lot lately. And so that was nice to offer that to a lot of people, and a lot of people that knew we had amazing sourced herbs but still had that Chinese prejudice. That just kind of that knocked it out for them. And then people realized, okay, well, you say you do, because everyone's like, oh yeah, I get you do testing, but it's you just never know. And I know what's going on with my herbs, but everyone, sometimes you need to, as I call it, activate the placebo, and that's always been that's been a nice thing to be able to offer people. So for those for those that are just starting out, the way I do it is we get that processed at our facility, and we do that traditionally via either just a water extraction or a water and alcohol extraction to get basically to make a tea or a tea and a tincture, and then we spray dry that very carefully. So we're left with an extract powder, and so we're left with a completely bioavailable powder that we can just then add in to whatever we're doing, and we store them in jars. And then when you're starting out, you can use them any which way, but a lot of people will like adding them in the beginning to a coffee. And so you can add that to the coffee to counteract the negative effects it's going to have on your adrenals and your immune system. And then you can do it that way. I like making hot chocolates out of them. People add them to smoothies. A lot of mums will take the Mason's mushrooms, the mushroom blend, and add that to spaghetti sauces and broths and things they Trojan horse them into their families. And a lot of people in the beginning will say just get their Jing, which is a blend. So at SuperFeast, I do blends of tonic herbs. It takes me a long time to come out with them because there's a lot of intent that goes into them. And I also do individual herbs, and the blends are much easier to start with. And the two that people often start with the most is the Jing, which associated with that kidney, adrenal, pouring that essence back in. And that's good enough to just have on its own in hot water.
I've got my neural nectar right here. It's so good.
Oh man,
That's a
you're on the
great
neural?
one. Yeah.
It's good stuff, man, that neural.
Yeah, that is a good one. I highly recommend get on the neural nectar. That is a regular go-to for me.
Yeah, the fans of neural nectar are like absolute fans. Like, it's funny that one, because they're nootropic herbs, and they're herbs for bringing circulation through the brain, for supporting white matter and gray matter, for supporting the synapse creation, for supporting mood through neurotransmitters. But it's doing that as well as working on the brain tissue. It's also doing that via working on the heart, the kidneys, the yang of the kidneys, and also the lungs. And it's just beautiful to see that, like, people go for like a nootropic brain activator and then feel through using neural nectar, I don't have to tell you this, but feel that there's this association between the brain and the organs. And the whole Taoist thought on it is that in order for you to have an expression of health in your brain, that is going to be the accumulation of all the vital organs within your system, especially heart, spleen, lungs, kidneys, and liver. But then you can go even further. You need all those functioning. Then the actual regulation of the brain is the kidneys. And that's why I've got, the mucuna, the rhodiola, and the white peony in the neural nectar, because they're having particular effects on the brain, but they're also toning that kidney Jing. And so in the beginning, if someone's like, gosh, I'm exhausted and my brain needs a little bit of a tune up, what should I go for? You go for the Jing first, the Jing blend, because we need the kidneys to be functioning. From the way we look at it, it's an absolute baseline of your health and your hormonal health and your energy. So we build that back up and take Jing for as long as you need to feel that your stores are really, in place. And it might take some lifestyle changes as well, and it will take some lifestyle changes, I think I have to say. But you take the Jing to that point where you feel you're topped up, and then and if you're starting out in conjunction, I like to see people on mushrooms as well. There's medicinal mushrooms. These are tree mushrooms. They're not the ground mushrooms, the portobellos and the buttons. They're not psychedelic mushrooms. These are the mushrooms that have been medicine for thousands of years for our nervous system, hormone system, but especially our immune system. There is tissue within our gut that beyond that, they're prebiotic for our bacteria. So it's a beautiful gut healing, mushy and herb to have in there. But there is tissue within our gut. And then when the polysaccharides within the mushrooms enter into that tissue, we have immune cells there within it that they get hit. They have receptors particularly designed for medicinal mushroom compounds. And then that point, you get this incredible activation of immune, just basically immune activity. And so they're a companion species, and it seems like we've evolved to really have these deep these beta glucans within medicinal mushrooms within our system. When you start to feel that, you start to feel activated when you're on these medicinal mushrooms. And quite often we've been deficient for so long, people's immune systems have been without for so long that there's a bit of a Western white bread flabby immunity going on. And it's incredible to feel they're not a silver bullet. There's many aspects to immunity, but it's incredible to just have them in your system, knocking that side of yourself up so that you can start taking down viral load, pathogenic load, bacterial load, fungal load. Yes, these mushrooms are amazing for fungus. Don't buy the whole no mushrooms ever. And Ayurveda's pretty much like that as well, but they unfortunately completely bypass the fact that these have a completely different energetic to the tamasic ground mushrooms. And these are actually really amazing a lot of the time, especially particulars within the Mason's mushrooms blend, the poria, at moving water and moving chi. And it's actually the exact opposite of what they're talking about in terms of it being dampening and soddening, and it actually moves the water chi and can actually be used in cases of edema, right? Mushrooms very potent with edema, very incredible chi tonics are bringing vitality to the body. And it goes on and on. I mean, there's the amount of immune activity that comes from these things, but they're not just stimulating, they're modulating. And so you see even in autoimmune conditions that they can be used, and this is clinically, this is not driven by me. This is just after years of talking to clinicians who have used chaga, reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, these herbs that, if you look at some classifications, they're immune stimulants. Can't use them when the immune system's overstimulated in autoimmunity, but in fact you can. You can actually track via the antibodies that are present, and within an autoimmune condition, that it is having a regulating effect, not just a purely stimulating effect. But if you're in that position, still talk to your practitioner, but just maybe just like start having this conversation, because you can't just use. People are just trying to use immune stimulants, or in the case of autoimmunity, people are just trying to use immune suppressants. And it just doesn't work like that. You need immune regulators and immune nourishers. And when you have receptors within your immune system designed for the mushy love, then you better start getting them into your body.
Yeah. Are you up on any of the research going on with like Alzheimer's and dementia and the potential remedy with lion's mane, but the stack of like lion's mane, niacin, and psilocybin? Yeah. Are you up on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm always keen on that conversation with lion's mane and dementia and Alzheimer's. The lion's mane that I take and the lion's mane that I produce is just the fruiting body, and so the fruiting body contains majority of the compounds for neurogenesis and for helping the myelin sheath of the nervous system redevelop. It's the one I've got my mum going on really hard. But when you start getting into the nitty gritty of these protocols, quite often when you go really down the rabbit hole of reductionism from what it's taken isolated compounds like niacin or anything that's going to vascularize the body. But you start getting into the territory of somewhat more of a pharmaceutical mindset of medicinal mushrooms, which I think is good. I'm not going to do it, but I think it's really good. But there are certain compounds that seemingly necessary to really nail that protocol that you'd need the mycelium of the lion's mane for, which is growing on the inside of the tree. Now, the reason I don't do that is because if I was going to want to get access to the mycelium body that's on the inside of the tree, rather than just the fruiting body that humans have always been able to get access to, there's no way you're going to get to that mycelial body in the tree. You need to grow on a grain. And you need to grow in a lab that's very controlled. You need to grow on something like oats or rice that you can wash away. Well, no, not for long-term usage. I like to, I have a lot of people using our lion's mane in that protocol, and I've heard success, but it's not that kind of level of reducing a mushroom to its parts. It's not my world. And although, I've got my mum doing that, don't get me wrong. Like, I love these kinds of protocols, and I love that in that health world, that slight pharmaceutical reductionism, get it down to its parts. Cause part of me wants to know, I love doing that. I love taking little particular isolates here and there, but not for a long time. And if I try to take them for a long time, if I try to take a particular like isolate or a mycelium derived medicinal mushroom or lion's mane, instinctually I can't get around it. I can't turn into a habit. And so I just wanted to get really clear on that, because if you want to be doing that in a particular way that protocol has been lied down with the hereniosides and there's another compound that's like I've been talking about all yesterday, and my mind's in a different dreamy space. It's not. But there's a particular compound within the mycelium that is technically needed for that protocol. So at that point, maybe go for someone doing it from mycelium, but and growing it on grain. But that lacks so much romance. And if you're going to be doing something for like 60 years, which is what I plan to be doing with lion's mane, I need more romance. I need it grown on a wild oak, because that's the native food of the lion's mane. And so that's kind of where I sit on it. And that's my distinction there. I want you to have long-term health intentions with these herbs. Let's take them the way they've been taken for a long time. I'm trying to keep as much of the scientist-driven and businessman-driven action out of this. I'm trying to maintain it as a dreaming tonic herbalist, and because I feel that's what people will integrate into their culture and their lifestyle long term, and will ultimately breed the greatest health long term for them and their families.
It's beautiful, man. I love your vision of that, and that you're holding strong in that integrity and that vision. At the same time, again, that middle way is shining bright within you, in which you're not shunning away from other procedures and Western modes of medicine. It seems to be very integral, very integrative and complete, which I'm excited about. We need people like you really holding space for it all, yet having a particular vision and a particular integrity that, yeah, it's beautiful. So good work, man.
Thanks, man. Trying.
Yeah. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I think that's a lot for people and really helpful. I'll leave links to your videos and your social media and your website and that. And yeah, get in touch with this SuperFeast and Mason's work. It really is incredible. So good work, man. Great to get in touch and chat. I love your work, and much love to your family.
Thanks so much, man. A lot of love to your family. Good to see your face again, and good to have seen your face last year. That was just before I went to Bali in China, actually. I saw you. Congratulations on your book launch again, and let's do it again.
Let's do it again, man. Yeah, it had been quite a while. That David Wolf retreat was the time we connected, which was quite the trip, huh?
Quite the bloody trip.
On all levels were illuminated.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, everyone, we'll leave you to read between the lines on that one, and let's do it. Much love, bro.